Laos, officially the Lao People's Democratic Republic, or commonly referred to its colloquial name of Muang Lao, is a landlocked country in the heart of the Indochinese peninsula of mainland Southeast Asia, bordered by Myanmar and China to the northwest, Vietnam to the east, Cambodia to the south, and Thailand to the west. Present-day Laos traces its historic and cultural identity to the kingdom of Lan Xang Hom Khao, which existed for 4 centuries as one of the largest kingdoms in Southeast Asia. Due to Lan Xang's central geographical location in Southeast Asia, the kingdom was able to become a popular hub for overland trade, becoming wealthy economically as well as culturally. After a period of internal conflict, Lan Xang broke off into 3 separate kingdoms: Luang Phabang, Vientiane and Champasak. In 1893, it became a French protectorate, with the 3 territories uniting to form what is now known as Laos. It briefly gained independence in 1945 after Japanese occupation, but returned to French rule until it was granted autonomy in 1949. Laos became independent in 1953, with a constitutional monarchy under Sisavangvong. Shortly after independence, a long civil war ended the monarchy, when the communist Pathet Lao movement came to power in 1975. Laos is a one-party socialist republic. It espouses Marxism and is governed by a single-party communist Politburo dominated by military generals. The Socialist Republic of Vietnam and the Vietnam People's Army continue to have significant influence in Laos. The capital city is Vientiane. Other large cities include Luang Phabang, Savannakhet, and Paxi. The official language is Lao. Laos is a multi-ethnic country with the politically and culturally dominant Lao people making up approximately 60% of the population, mostly in the lowlands. Mon Khmer groups, the Hmong, and other indigenous hill tribes, accounting for 40% of the population, live in the foothills and mountains. Laos' ambitious strategies for development is based on generating electricity from its rivers and selling the power to its neighbors, namely Thailand, China, and Vietnam, as well as its initiative to become a land-linked nation, shown by the planning of 4 new railways connecting Laos to those same countries. This, along with growth of the mining sector, Laos has been referred to as one of East Asia and Pacific's fastest-growing economies by the World Bank, with annual GDP growth averaging 7% for the past decade. It is a member of the Asia-Pacific Trade Agreement, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, East Asia Summit and La Francophonie. Laos applied for membership of the World Trade Organization in 1997. On the 2nd of February 2013, it was granted full membership. According to the anti-corruption non-governmental organization Transparency International, Laos remains one of the most corrupt countries in the world. This has deterred foreign investment and created major problems with the rule of law, including the nation's ability to enforce contract and business regulation. This has contributed to a third of the population of Laos currently living below the international poverty line. Laos has a low-income economy, with one of the lowest annual incomes in the world. In 2014, the country ranked 141st on the Human Development Index, indicating low and medium development. According to the Global Hunger Index, Laos ranks as the 29th hungriest nation in the world out of the list of the 52 nations with the worst hunger situation. Laos has also had a poor human rights record. Etymology: the English word Laos was coined by the French, who united the 3 Lao kingdoms in French Indochina in 1893, and named the country as the plural of the dominant and most common ethnic group, which are the Lao people. In the Lao language, the country's name is Muang Lao or Pathet Lao. Both literally mean Lao country. History: Early history. An ancient human skull was recovered from the Tampar Ling cave in the Annamite Mountains in northern Laos. The skull is at least 46,000 years old, making it the oldest modern human fossil found to date in Southeast Asia. Archaeological evidence suggests agriculturist society developed during the 4th millennium BC. Burial jars and other kinds of sepulchres suggest a complex society in which bronze objects appeared around 1500 BC, and iron tools were known from 700 BC. The proto-historic period is characterized by contact with Chinese and Indian civilizations. According to linguistic and other historical evidence, Thai-speaking tribes migrated southwestward to the modern territories of Laos and Thailand from Guangxi sometime between the 8th–10th centuries. Lan Xang Laos traces its history to the kingdom of Lan Xang, founded in the 14th century by a Lao princess Ngum, who with 10,000 Khmer troops, took over Vientiane. Ngum was descended from a long line of Lao kings, tracing back to Khaon Bullom. He made Theravada Buddhism the state religion, and Lan Xang prospered. Within 20 years of its formation, the kingdom expanded eastward to Kampa and along the Annamite Mountains in Vietnam. His ministers, unable to tolerate his ruthlessness, forced him into exile to the present-day Thai province of Nan in 1373, where he died. Fangum's eldest son, Oun Huan, came to the throne under the name Samsontai and reigned for 43 years. During his reign, Lan Xang became an important trade center. After his death in 1421, Lan Xang collapsed into warring factions for the next 100 years. In 1520, Fotis Arath came to the throne and moved the capital from Luang Phabang to Vientiane to avoid a Burmese invasion. Setdat Irat became king in 1548, after his father was killed, and ordered the construction of what would become the symbol of Laos, that Luang. Setdat Irat disappeared in the mountains on his way back from a military expedition into Cambodia, and Lan Xang began to rapidly decline. It was not until 1637, when Saoiranya Vongsa ascended the throne, that Lan Xang would further expand its frontiers. His reign is often regarded as Laos's golden age. When he died, leaving Lan Xang without an heir, the kingdom divided into 3 principalities. Between 1763 and 1769, Burmese armies overran northern Laos and annexed Luang Phabang, while Champasak eventually came under Siamese suzerainty. Chao Nuvong was installed as a vassal king of Vientiane by the Siamese. He encouraged a renaissance of Lao fine arts and literature, and improved relations with Luang Phabang. Under Vietnamese pressure, he rebelled against the Siamese in 1826. The rebellion failed and Vientiane was ransacked. Nuvong was taken to Bangkok as a prisoner, where he died. A Siamese military campaign in Laos in 1876 was described by a British observer as having been transformed into slave-hunting raids on a large scale. French Laos in the late 19th century, Luang Phabang was ransacked by the Chinese Black Flag Army. France rescued King Oun Kham and added Luang Phabang to the Protectorate of French Indochina. Shortly after, the Kingdom of Champasak and the territory of Vientiane were added to the Protectorate. King Sisavang Vong of Luang Phabang became ruler of a unified Laos, and Vientiane once again became the capital. Laos never had any importance for France other than as a buffer state between British-influenced Thailand and the more economically important Annam. and Tonkin. During the rule, the French introduced the corvée, a system that forced every male Lao to contribute 10 days of manual labor per year to the colonial government. Laos produced tin, rubber, and coffee, but never accounted for more than 1% of French Indochina's exports. By 1940, around 600 French citizens lived in Laos. During World War II, in Laos, Vichy France, Fascist Thailand, Imperial Japan, Free France, and Chinese nationalist armies occupied Laos. On 9 March 1945, a nationalist group declared Laos once more independent, with Luang Phabang as its capital, but on 7 April 1945 2 battalions of Japanese troops occupied the city. The Japanese attempted to force Sisavang to declare Laotian independence, but on 8 April he instead simply declared an end to Laos' status as a French protectorate. The king then secretly sent Prince Kindavorm to represent Laos to the Allied forces and Prince Sisavang as representative to the Japanese. When Japan surrendered, some Lao nationalists declared Laotian independence, but by early 1946, French troops had reoccupied the country and conferred limited autonomy on Laos. During the First Indochina War, the Indochinese Communist Party formed the Pathet Lao Resistance Organization. The Pathet Lao began a war against the French colonial forces with the aid of the Vietnamese Independence Organization. In 1950, the French granted Laos semi-autonomy as an associated state within the French Union. France remained in de facto control until the 22nd of October 1953, when Laos gained full independence as a constitutional monarchy. Independence and communist rule. The First Indochina War took place across French Indochina and eventually led to French defeat and the signing of a peace accord for Laos at the Geneva Conference of 1954. In 1955, the U.S. Department of Defense created a Special Programs Evaluation Office to replace French support of the Royal Lao Army against the Communist Pathet Lao as part of the U.S. containment policy. In 1960, amidst a series of rebellions in the Kingdom of Laos, fighting broke out between the Royal Lao Army and the Communist North Vietnam-backed and Soviet Union-backed Pathet Lao guerrillas. A second provisional government of national unity formed by Prince Suvarnabhumi in 1962 proved to be unsuccessful, and the situation steadily deteriorated into large-scale civil war between the Royal Laotian government and the Pathet Lao. The Pathet Lao were backed in militarily by the NVA and Viet Cong. Laos was a key part of the Vietnam War since parts of Laos were invaded and occupied by North Vietnam for use as a supply route for its war against the South. In response, the United States initiated a bombing campaign against the North Vietnamese positions, supported regular and irregular anti-communist forces in Laos and supported South Vietnamese incursions into Laos. In 1968, the North Vietnamese Army launched a multi-division attack to help the Pathet Lao to fight the Royal Lao Army. The attack resulted in the army largely demobilizing, leaving the conflict to irregular ethnic Hmong forces of the U.S. Secret Army, backed by the United States and Thailand, and led by General Vang Pao. Massive aerial bombardment against the Pathet Lao and invading People's Army of Vietnam forces were carried out by the United States to prevent the collapse of the Royal Kingdom of Laos central government, and to deny the use of the Ho Chi Minh Trail to attack U.S. forces in the Republic of Vietnam. Between 1964 and 1973, U.S. bombing raids made Laos the most heavily bombed country on Earth, where American B-52s dropped an average of one bomb load every 8 minutes 24 hours a day, totaling more ordnance than was dropped during the whole of World War II. Up to 350,000 civilians in Laos died during the U. bombing of Laos. In 1975, the Pathet Lao, along with the Vietnam People's Army, and backed by the Soviet Union, overthrew the royalist Lao government, forcing King Savangvathana to abdicate on the 2nd of December 1975. He later died in prison. Between 20,000 and 70,000 Laotians died during the Civil War. On the 2nd of December 1975, after taking control of the country, the Pathet Lao government under Khazon Phamvihani renamed the country as the Lao People's Democratic Republic and signed agreements giving Vietnam the right to station armed forces and to appoint advisors to assist in overseeing the country. Laos was requested in 1979 by the Socialist Republic of Vietnam to end relations with the People's Republic of China, leading to isolation in trade by China, the United States, and other countries. In addition to the North Vietnamese invasion of Laos by the Soviet-backed Vietnam People's Army, the post-Vietnam War occupation of Laos continued during the 1970s and 1980s. The conflict between Hmong rebels and the Vietnam People's Army of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, as well as the SRV-backed Pathet Lao, continued in key areas of Laos, including in Sasabu Enclosed Military Zone, Zasambu Enclosed Military Zone near Vientiane Province and Xiangkhouang Province. From 1975 to 1996, the United States resettled some 250,000 Lao refugees from Thailand, including 130,000 Hmong. Geography. Laos is the only landlocked country in Southeast Asia, and it lies mostly between latitudes 14 degrees and 23 degrees north and longitudes 100 degrees and 108 degrees east. Its thickly forested landscape consists mostly of rugged mountains, the highest of which is Phobia at 2,818 meters, with some plains and plateaus. The Mekong River forms a large part of the western boundary with Thailand, whereas the mountains of the Annamite Range form most of the eastern border with Vietnam and the Luang Phabang Range the northwestern border with the Thai Highlands. There are two plateaux, the Angkoang in the north and the Bolavan Plateau at the southern end. The climate is tropical and influenced by the monsoon pattern. There is a distinct rainy season from May to November, followed by a dry season from December to April. Local tradition holds that there are 3 seasons, as the latter 2 months of the climatologically defined dry season are noticeably hotter than the earlier 4 months. The capital and largest city of Laos is Vientiane, and other major cities include Luang Phabang, Savannakhet, and Paksi. In 1993, the Laos government set aside 21% of the nation's land area for habitat conservation preservation. The country is one of 4 in the opium poppy growing region known as the Golden Triangle. According to the October 2007 UNODC Fact Book Opium Poppy Cultivation in Southeast Asia, the poppy cultivation area was 15 square kilometers, down from 18 square kilometers in 2006. Laos can be considered to consist of 3 geographical areas: North, Central, and South. Administrative divisions. Laos is divided into 17 provinces and 1 prefecture, which includes the capital city Vientiane. The new province, Xisamboon Province, was established on the 13th of December 2013. Provinces are further divided into districts and then villages. An urban village is essentially a town. Environmental problems and illegal logging. Laos is increasingly suffering from environmental problems, with deforestation a particularly significant issue, as expanding commercial exploitation of the forests, plans for additional hydroelectric facilities, foreign demand for wild animals and non-wood forest products for food and traditional medicines, and a growing population all create increasing pressure The United Nations Development Programme warns that protecting the environment and sustainable use of natural resources in Laos PDR is vital for poverty reduction and economic growth. In April 2011, the independent newspaper reported that Laos had started work on the controversial Xayaburi Dam on the Mekong River without getting formal approval. Environmentalists say the dam will adversely affect 60 million people, and Cambodia and Vietnam, concerned about the flow of water further downstream, are officially opposed to the project. The Mekong River Commission, a regional intergovernmental body designed to promote the sustainable management of the river, famed for its giant catfish, carried out a study that warned if Xayaburi and subsequent schemes went ahead, it would fundamentally undermine the abundance, productivity and diversity of the Mekong fish resources. Neighboring Vietnam warned that the dam would harm the Mekong Delta, which is the home to nearly 20 million people and supplies around 50% of Vietnam's rice output and over 70% of both its seafood and fruit output. Milton Osborne, visiting fellow at the Lowy Institute for International Policy who has written widely on the Mekong, warns, the future scenario is of the Mekong ceasing to be a bounteous source of fish and guarantor of agricultural richness, with the great river below China becoming little more than a series of unproductive lakes. Illegal logging is also a major problem. Environmental groups estimate that 500,000 cubic meters of logs are being cut by Vietnam People's Army forces and companies it owns, in cooperation with the Lao People's Army, and then transported from Laos to Vietnam every year, with most of the furniture eventually exported to Western countries by the VPA military-owned companies. A 1992 government survey indicated that forests occupied about 48% of Laos' land area. Forest coverage decreased to 41% in a 2002 survey. Lao authorities have said that, in reality, forest coverage might be no more than 35% because of development projects such as dams, on top of the losses to illegal logging.